What's up, college football fans? Once again, I'm Andrew Hudson. That is Nathaniel Gilmore. And the playoffs are here. Game time has come. I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas. We are recording this on the day of New Year's Eve. So we got a playoff game tonight to watch and three tomorrow. So excited to see what's going to be happening. We're going to be breaking it all down for you today. Nathaniel, how are we doing? How was your Christmas?
Christmas is good. A lot of bouncing around. Yeah, going to LA, hanging out with family, getting to watch the USC game. Just great times all around. Really, especially with bowl games and stuff, it's just a feeling you can't beat.
Oh, it's awesome. I know you're all probably asking right now, is that a different garage behind Andrew? Yes, I'm back in Florida visiting my family, having a good time here. But let's start talking about our teams and going to your USC Trojans, who had one of the most exciting bowl games of the year, coming out with the victory. Oh my goodness, Nathaniel, what a game.
Yeah, I mean, 35-31. Like I said on the instant reaction, start the year in Vegas playing an 8-4 SEC team and
Mm-hmm.
winning on the last second drive. End the year in Vegas playing an 8-4 SEC team on a last second drive. It was just a weird finality to the season. I think one thing that, 7-6 isn't the record we're looking for, but one thing that you can say about this team is that they didn't quit. Last year's team, they went 7-5 in the regular season, but they quit halfway through the year. And I think that was one thing that you could tell the culture kind of shifted this year. So it was great to see. I mean, down 24-7 in the third quarter. That wasn't ideal. I Jaden Mayava didn't look like a college quarterback for about 3 quarters. I think he had he has this weird thing of every single game he started, he starts off super slow. And this one, he had a play where I was just, I was done. He got rushed. He tried to evade it, didn't, and then he tried to throw it away. But I don't think he knew where he was like positioned, and he ended up throwing it backwards about like it was the wildest thing. But he ended up yeah, that kind of fourth quarter just went crazy. He ended up with like 295 yards, 4 touchdowns. He did have 3 interceptions, which were three really bad interceptions. I think it's going to be interesting where we go from here. Do we just hope that he kind of picks it up next year, or do we put everything in a 5-star QB we got actually flipped from Texas A&M, ironically? Or do we go to the portal like the quarterback from South Dakota, Gronoski? So it'll be interesting what Lincoln Riley wants to do. I think the biggest thing for this offense was just the emergence of the running game. Without Woody Marks, without Quentin Joyner, which was a big hit in the portal. Our freshman running backs, Brian Jackson especially, looked great. Brian Jackson's like a 6 foot, 230 pound running back. He's wearing 21. So if you know anything about USC history, that's, you have Alan Bradford, and most importantly, you have Lendale White,
Mm-hmm.
and he runs the exact same way. You can tell he was putting on a little Christmas weight because he had like the jersey rolled up and you see the belly flowing, and he's just like running over guys. And it was great to see. And in the receiving game, I mean, we lost 2 wide receivers. And before the game, it was just me kind of hoping like, okay, Branch and Robinson probably had the two least production out of the four. So maybe they're just trying to split up NIL so we can put it anywhere else and actually have, our two best receivers on the field at all times, because we would have kind of a 4 or 5 man rotation for a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. So our best receivers wouldn't be on the field the whole time. So I think this really showed that, we really force fed Jacoby Lane and Makai Lemon, and Jacoby had 3 touchdowns on the game, and he just went crazy. And the defense looked good. I mean, realistically, 31, I think that's the second most points we've given up all year, besides the Notre Dame game. And the Penn State. Penn State scored 33, I guess. But yeah, they looked good. Most of those points were because of turnovers on our end. But I'm really excited for next year with the talent we're bringing in, because they're going to be a lot better than they were last year, just or this year, just talent wise. So just seeing what Danton Lynn can do with this group is exciting, but also kind of scared that he might get a head coaching job offer somewhere soon. So hopefully next year is kind of that year we get it rolling. But yeah, it was a crazy game, and one of those games where you thought game over, just kind of like the Penn State game 5, 6 years ago. Actually, when's that? 2016, 8 years ago? Man, that's crazy. But
Yikes.
yeah, I think it was the biggest comeback in bowl game history for the Trojans since that game. So
Well,
yeah, great game. Got the nerves going up. It was super late. I think it was like 10 p.m. So it
oh,
would have been like, I don't know how anyone on the East Coast even watched that game, or even Texas A&M fans. But yeah, it was fun. Got to watch that with the grandparents, so that was a lot of fun.
yeah, that's great. I know. I think it was this 10:30 kick here on the East Coast, and I watched the highlights later. I couldn't stay up for the whole game. So, and the crazy thing, I looked at the halftime score. It was 7-7, thinking, oh, it'll be a low scoring game. Not much going on, and they exploded in the second half.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, like you said, not necessarily the record that you were hoping for, but ended the year with a winning record.
Yeah,
Looking forward to next season. You have hopes for Maava, guys coming in, the defense looking better. So it's those steps forward that make it seem like next year could definitely be a better year.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
we're seeing similar things on the flip side here in Florida. I was in Tampa for the bowl game. I could have gone, didn't go. I spent time with family instead. But Florida ends up with a victory over Tulane, winning by 20 plus points. Tulane was definitely overmatched. Their quarterback has gone in the portal to Duke, which is a whole other conversation. And their backup has been a couple places now, but definitely was not up to par in this game. So Florida was able to handle the game pretty easily, even though we struggled to score when we got to the red zone early in the game, had to settle for some field goals. But putting up 33 points and holding them to 8, definitely a good win for the Gators. And they only scored in the last few seconds of the game. I was upset. I wish we could have had a shutout there. But man, overall, kind of as we've talked about over the last few weeks, DJ Lagway has so much potential, and he
Oh,
has a lot to grow in. He has definitely things he needs to improve on, being smarter with his throws, being able to hit just smart, quick throws at times rather than relying on the big plays. But even with that, as a true freshman, there's so much that's moldable and that is exciting to see for the future. The defense, once again, was playing fantastic. And if we can carry that into next season, I have high hopes, along with the players that we have coming in. And one development I don't think we talked about last time because it happened after Dallas Wilson, that wide receiver that we said, oh, we were so close on landing him, but he ended up signing with Oregon. Apparently, national letters of intent don't have any weight at all either anymore because he says, no, I want to go back home. Oregon lets him go, and the Gators have another 5-star wide receiver. So I, yeah, it's amazing. I don't understand how that happens, but we've landed Dallas Wilson. So that bumps our recruiting up even more, gives us yeah, a really good look coming into next year because we are losing some receivers. Elijah Badger and Chimedike were really our best two receivers who came in as transfers. And we need some more talent on that side of the ball, really specifically for receivers. But we have our All-American center. I didn't even realize this until they were bringing things up, but our our center, Jake Slaughter, was first team All-American, and
Oh,
he's coming back for another year, which is going to be awesome. And we have great running backs there in the system. Jacoby Jackson, Jaden Baugh has been great to end the year. And if we're steady in the trenches like we have been this year, I'm looking at our schedule and even the losses we've had this year: Miami, Texas A&M, Tennessee, Georgia, Texas. For uh, for an idea, if you don't know, the SEC is keeping the exact same schedule next year as it had this year, which is ridiculous. But every game that's on there, they're just flipping home and away. So all those teams we played, we're playing again. And all those that I just listed out, I see as possible wins next year. Miami's losing Cam Ward, Texas A&M. We've seen they're not as strong as we thought they were. Tennessee still is a playoff team, but has a lot of holes in their program. Georgia is going to be changing quarterbacks and have a lot of questions, and Texas is the same way, looking probably the strongest out of those. But hey, we are rising, and I think the natural hope should be to go to the playoffs. As as fans, you have to think that way, and to consider, could we go 10-2? Yeah, yeah. Let's say yes. Let's hope we can, and move towards that. But I'm definitely hopeful and joyful, going to next season and looking forward to what the possibilities might be. It's definitely 1 year ago, my hopes were not nearly the same as they are now. So I'm glad about that for sure. But hey, both of us ending the season on a high note, ready for the off season and hoping for good next year.
yeah, I think just kind of watching the Florida season just kind of through you and just pay attention to what's happening. It was really cool to just kind of see that culture shift, throughout the season, where at the beginning of the year it looked like, oh, all hope is lost. And then just that bye week was so instrumental, and
Mm,
they just came out playing such great defense. DJ Lagway really turned it up, and yeah, it's exciting to kind of see how this team is, going to turn it around next year and just start off on fire, and Napier start off not on the hot seat, and just really be able to, you know, really show that this is what he create, the culture he created, and this was what he was looking forward to. Because I know I was hearing a lot of things last off season where it was a lot of positive culture things, but
mhm.
just like kind of the media around it was like super, pessimistic, and bringing the program down. So it's really nice to see kind of people overcoming narratives like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree totally. All the word coming out is the players love playing for Napier. They fight hard for him. They love him as a coach. The results just weren't there. But coming off of the recruiting maelstrom that was Dan Mullen and Napier having to build himself for a few years, we're seeing it blossom into what it could be. So if that is where we're headed for the future, I mean, this is awesome. And yeah, my thoughts on him have definitely improved coming in. But that's our Trojans, that's our Gators. Let's move forward. Let's talk about these playoff games, because we had 4 playoff games last week. We've got 4 more today and tomorrow. And overall, I guess before we get into the individual games, what a snooze fest. Oh my goodness. These clunkers were so tough to watch, so disappointing overall. But we had obviously Notre Dame, Indiana, Penn State, SMU, Clemson, Texas, and then Tennessee, Ohio State. And we'll talk about each one of them. So let's go ahead and you can give your thoughts, but let's go ahead and start with Notre Dame, Indiana, the first game of the first round of the playoffs, which Notre Dame really dominated from the beginning on. What did you see there, man?
It it was kind of one of those things where like the beginning, this was what the first game, and just really watching the presentation and everything was just really exciting. And I think we probably should have been doing first round, home field games since the playoffs started. I think this is it was just
Awesome.
amazing atmosphere.
Yep.
And I said that this would be the best game to watch out of all of them. I thought because there were going to be a lot of bangers. It just ended up being the closest game, ironically. Um,
In
but
the end.
yeah, after everything said and done, Kurt Signetti was like on college game day, just talking a lot of smack. And like, why are you're about to coach a game today? Like, why are you on TV, saying all this stuff? And kind of him doing that made me feel like, oh, Indiana's gonna come out like on fire. They're going to be aggressive. And then they're like punting from the 40 and doing all that stuff. And it felt like every time Indiana needed something to happen, they needed to force the point. They just kind of like punted. They kind of gave up. Yeah, and I mean it was Notre Dame. Slowly got into their offense. Indiana, credit to them, they were playing great defense to start off, but when your offense is so ineffective and not taking chances, Jeremiah Love having that 7-yard
Yeah.
touchdown. I was like, geez, that was like a punch to the gut. But I mean, Curtis Rourke, which I thought was one of the more underrated quarterbacks. He struggled, especially early. They couldn't really get the running game going, but props to Notre Dame. You can tell they built from the trenches. They have two running backs that played really well in Love and Price. Riley Leonard was able to run pretty well, and he made passes when he needed to. He did have one ugly interception that kind of made it feel like, maybe Indiana has a chance. But I mean, their defense just played so well all game long and really diffused that.
Well, and that's one thing that's impressed me over and over again now at the end of this year. The Notre Dame defense is for real.
Yeah, 100%.
They shut down teams. And I look especially at that defensive backfield and those safeties. Jordan Clark and Xavier Watts
Oh,
are ballers.
yeah.
Oh my goodness, back there. So, I have always had low hopes for Notre Dame. I'm kind of a Notre Dame hater in some ways,
Yeah.
along with Penn State, really both of them. But this could be a chance for them.
Yeah.
Honestly, they really could have a chance to win it this year as they took down Indiana pretty easily. Penn State SMU was our first game of day two last week, and I was out at lunch with some family at a sports bar kind of place. They had the game up on TV, and every time I looked up, it's Penn State got a pick six. Penn State scored again. Oh my goodness, what's happening? Kevin Jennings was just riddled with mistakes all game long for SMU. That Penn State defense was destroying the SMU offense. Drew Aller played well, and they dominated this game as well. And man, everything watching the game, it just seemed to turn and flip Penn State's way. A lot of that by their own doing because
Yeah.
they're a really good team, but total letdown for SMU and their results in this game, and really from the beginning didn't have a chance.
Yeah, I think this game was weird. Just watching it was it was earlier on our side, so I kind of just woke up and popped it on, and then I was getting ready to go out, just kind of, watching it in and out. They like SMU's defense, they did really well to start
Mm.
off the game. It was just that offense. I mean, they
Yeah.
drove down the field, and I think this was probably one of the biggest moments of the game was Kevin Jennings on a 4th and 1 at the 19-yard line, rolling out. He can take a singular step. It was like inches or with 4th and 1. He could have just stepped forward, and because he was on a bootleg, step forward, first down, keep it rolling.
Mm.
His eyes got big. He saw tight end one-on-one with separation, throws it behind the tight end. Safety hits the ball out, which I mean, he was open. If he led him, touchdown, SMU's up 7-0 after Penn State went 3-and-out. And I mean, their defense, the first couple, let me read you the first couple Penn State possessions. 3-and-out, punt, another punt from their own 47, turnover on downs from SMU's 30, another turnover on downs from their own 19, and then they got 2 touchdowns to end the half. So
Well,
they
and before those 2 touchdowns, what was the score?
before those 2 touchdowns, it was 14-0 because of 2 pick 6s.
Their offense is getting shut down, but 2 pick 6s have them up by 14
Yeah,
points.
it was insane. I mean, Kevin Jennings, he had the slow start against Clemson, slow start the last couple games, honestly. But then he always turned it back up after a couple drives. He's like, okay, like get him into the game. But that just never happened this game. And then, I mean, the second half, it's 28-0. They get a field goal, but I mean, the game's over. You can maybe do that against, I mean, they did do that against Clemson, where okay, our defense can stop them, and we can just go on a run. But Penn State's defense is too good for that, where you're not scoring 4 touchdowns quickly. And yeah, Drew Aller, I mean, credit to them and that offense. They got a couple touchdowns to kind of push it. But yeah, it was just a blowout. It could have been closer, but it ended up being a 28-point game.
It was a rough watch. And let's talk about these last 2 games. We had the Orange Bowl, Clemson and Texas, 2 orange teams going up against each other. And at this point, I was begging for a good game. And Clemson gets the first touchdown. They go up 7-0. Okay, they're starting off like the SMU game. Let's go. And then Texas had it from there.
Yeah.
Really, with taking over the game. Their running game was just ridiculous with Wisner, and he got hurt a bit in the game, and then Jadon Blue just took over and dominated. He was looking great, and we've had questions about Quinn Ewers, but if their running game is going like that, he doesn't need to do much, and he had a great game, just controlling, having everything going well, and Texas did great in control of this game. Clemson tried to come back there at the end, but ultimately it was not enough, and we had another double-digit victory.
Yeah, their first touchdown Clemson had, first drive, whoever it was, I forgot who it was, but he did the night celebration, and I mean, call me an old head, but that used to mean end of the game type situations, like Steph Curry back in the day. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
that's
pretty
just
sure. I don't think Steph does that in the first quarter.
yeah, yeah. His first 3-pointer, I don't think he does it when it's 3-0 to start the game. It was just funny to me. But yeah, like you said, Quinn Ewers he did well. I think at one point he was like 7 for 7 for 100 yards, and I was watching that. I'm like, maybe I should have switched up my bracket a little bit. He's gonna be looking like this, but let's talk for later down the episode.
Yeah, definitely. And this was for that happening, the 7-0 score for Clemson, and then Texas coming back and taking the lead. That was the only lead change in the whole first round of the playoffs. No other lead changes at all, which leads us to our last game, Tennessee, Ohio State, in the one we were all waiting for. This SEC team coming into the Horseshoe, playing against Ohio State. Was the Big Ten for real? What's going to happen here? Wow. Wow, no words. 42-10 final score. Tennessee having no answers at all for what Ohio State was doing. I was totally wrong in what I thought was going to happen in that game. It was domination, and it was honestly. I had it up on my phone while I was with family, and then I ended up just kind of leaving it there and checking on the score every once in a while because that was tough to watch.
Yeah, I mean, there was a a smidgen of hope at halftime. It was what 21-3, and then Tennessee went down, scored, they're gonna get the ball back. And I think that was the big moment of the game. Like, okay,
Yep.
this can go one of two ways. What will Tennessee do? And if I'm not mistaken, they got 8 yards. And it just fizzled out.
Yep.
Ohio State went on to score a touchdown. Then Tennessee got another 6 play drive, and then another touchdown by Ohio State. And I mean, at that point, 35-10, it's kind of cooked. But yeah, Will Howard looked good. And that running game looked solid. It was just a lot of complimentary football by Ohio State, where their defense put a lot of pressure on. And then they got rewarded by Ohio State taking long drives to give that defense rest. And it was just back and forth. I mean, Howard probably had one bad throw that ended up in an interception. But I mean, Nico just did not have a good game. It looked like he wasn't really seeing the field well, and I mean their rushing game was solid. With Dylan Sampson getting hurt early, not too sure if him being healthy the whole game makes a ton of difference.
Mhm.
Maybe a little bit closer of a game, but yeah, Ohio State really impressed me this game.
They did, and yeah, it might not have totally changed things, but it was a huge thing for Tennessee. That's the SEC Player of the Year
Yeah.
who was out and they weren't able to have in the game. So disappointing for them for sure. And that's setting up some really good games over the next couple of days we're going to watch in the playoff. But let's switch gears a bit and talk about a few other topics in college football. We had the award ceremonies after the regular season, and the Heisman was awarded. We had Travis Hunter, Ashton Genty, Cam Ward, and Dylan Gabriel there for the Heisman ceremony. And in a close race, Travis Hunter wins the Heisman. I think between him and Genty, it was the closest race since 2009,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So both very deserving players who could have won the Heisman, but it ends up going to Travis Hunter. After it all and seeing it happen, what do you think about the results?
I stand by what I was going with, kind of my thought process before. I really would have loved seeing Genty win. I think, if I had a vote, he would have, I would have gone with Genty, but I totally understand the Hunter point of view. I mean, it's really impressive to see a guy play pretty much every single play. Um, I know it's a lot of people were talking about, oh, Jabril Peppers, Adoree Jackson, Dion, all these guys played both ways, but it's different to where
So
he's
different.
playing every single snap. And I mean, the toll that takes on a body, me working in like sports medicine, like I cannot like imagine like when I was working football, I can't imagine any of those guys playing both sides because it takes such a toll. Um, Especially a position where you're pretty much running cardio the entire game. Like you're running back and forth all game long. Um, yeah, so I mean, props to Travis Hunter. Was he won a couple other awards. I'm not too sure he should have. But um yeah, he just had an incredible season and, kind of excited to see how he's going to shape up in the NFL.
I agree. He, like you mentioned, he won the Blitnikoff Award for the best wide receiver in college football. Don't necessarily think that should have gone to him. There are other, I'd say, maybe more deserving players, but we're talking about a guy who's most likely going to go top two or three in the draft
Yeah.
as a corner primarily. and he's also one of the best receivers in college football. So that's even a difference there. Like you were mentioning, Jabril Peppers and other guys who have gone both ways. He's an absolute stud on both sides of the ball. Where if he was either one, he'd be a top 5 pick potentially. But with that, we talked about it before. It would have been cool to have seen Genty win, and we're really seeing an interesting similarity in the NCAA and NFL right now with Saquon Barkley,
Yeah.
who's also going for the rushing record in the NFL. And the MVP discussion is out there. And really, all of the talk right now is on Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Meanwhile, Saquon Barkley is over here going, I just ran for 2,000 and I might break the rushing record.
Yeah.
So same kind of thing here. Genty, who has the chance to break the all-time rushing record, he loses the Heisman Trophy. And it brings up that question, too, of playing extra games. Barry Sanders and Eric Dickerson played in less games than uh, Saquon and Ashton Genty are. So, does it hurt their overall record? I think that there should be a record recognized for those who played 12 games in the NFL, those who played 14, those who played 16, 17, whatever. Same thing with college football. We just need to know that it's there.
Yeah.
Because let's say that Genty goes out and breaks the record this week. Well, Barry Sanders should still be held in high esteem and recognized for what he did in, I'll remind you, 11 games.
Insane.
So with that, Travis Hunter, absolutely a deserving winner. Ashton Genty, fantastic player. Cam Ward and Dylan Gabriel as well. They didn't really have a chance in this race, but great quarterbacks in their own right. But it was good. And from everything I see, Travis Hunter seems like a good guy who works hard.
Mm-hmm.
Who seems like the perfect guy you want on your team. And I have high hopes for anyone who gets him in the NFL draft coming up this year, as it looks like these guys will certainly be first rounders. So good Heisman race there. There were some other good results for rewards as well. You have any thoughts?
I think Biletnikoff, that one was a little iffy, but I mean, this is a list of all the awards that he won. He got the Heisman, obviously. He had the AP College Football Player of the Year. He had the Walter Camp, which all three of those are pretty much just best player in college football. He had the Biletnikoff. He had the Bednarik, which ironically he didn't even qualify for the Thorpe Award, which is the best corner. Yeah. But he won the Bednarik, which is the best defensive player. That I think that one is the one where I'm like, all right, really? Are we? But yeah, he was a All-American. He's the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, and then first team All Big 12. So just really, really just deserving for most of them. But I mean, all the other kind of races went out how we kind of felt. I know Genty won the Maxwell, so at least he got something out of this.
Yeah, and I'm sure he got the running back award as well.
Oh,
I would imagine. Sure. So yeah, that's all the awards getting handed out. Everyone gets their prize, and but we know Travis Hunter is not getting the national championship. We'll see if Ashton Genty gets the national championship.
And if he breaks the record.
And he breaks the record, then that'll definitely change history forever. But let's go forward and have our trivia question. Nathaniel has got one ready for me right now that I'm about to tackle, take down, take behind the woodshed like Ohio State did in Tennessee. No, let's see what happens. What's your trivia question today, Nathaniel?
Yeah, so I was looking at a lot of semifinal, games in the past. Which ironically, there was a lot of I'll give you I'm gonna do it's like a multiple choice. I'll give you multiple choices on all these. Just because a lot of these I was like, whoa, I didn't you know, you have to really pull back the memory for them. But yeah, kind of looking through these games was interesting because, there's all the discourse about, like there's so many blowouts. We should have, but a lot of these semifinal games before when it was 4 teams, there was a ton of blowouts. I think the
Right.
narrative shifted because we had two great games last year. But yeah, so that was just one interesting tidbit I kind of saw while going through these. But so I'm gonna go through a couple categories. There are seven categories, so 7 questions.
Mm.
It's all going to be multiple choice, and yeah, it should be relative. It's not crazy knowledge. You don't have to have an insane ball knowledge to get these. So I'm excited. But so for the first one, these are all semifinal stats, by the
Okay.
way. So no, and I'll give you the teams they played against too, just so you can get the context of it. But so for the first one, we have the most yards rushing in a semifinal game.
Mm.
So we have, is it A, Sony Michelle in 2018 in that infamous Rose Bowl against
Mhm.
Oklahoma? We have B, Trey Sermon, Ohio State's running back,
Mhm.
against Clemson in 2021? Or is it C, Ezekiel Elliott, Ohio State versus Alabama in the first college football playoffs?
Yeah.
So just most rushing yards.
Man, that is tough. Sony Michelle, we gotta remember at the time, is Nick Chubb still with him? I'm thinking. But they were a
Yeah,
tandem in that backfield that were
it was insane.
crazy. But Sony Michelle came out and he looked like a stud
Mm-hmm.
there. That it's interesting. What stood out to me most was when you said Trey Sermon. There's just something that's sticking out of a game where he went crazy. And then obviously Ezekiel Elliott, he popped off some big runs. But I'm gonna go with Trey Sermon.
So Trey Sermon had the third most
Oh man.
rushing yards. He did have the most attempts, I'm pretty sure. He had
Oh really?
31 attempts, 193 yards, not too shabby. But that was 40 yards behind the number one guy, Ezekiel Elliott, who had
Wow.
230 against Alabama.
That
But
is wild.
yeah, I was looking through. Sony Michelle had 181 yards, but
Okay.
it was that tandem with Nick Chubb because he had 11 attempts for 181 yards and 3 touchdowns. So if
That's
he had 10 more attempts, he probably would be number one.
sure. Man, that's wild. Yeah, good for the. Okay, so Zeke Elliott. Yeah, that was a dominant run for them there.
Yeah, that was yeah. It was kind of one of those things where like you just have to think, the biggest game pretty much.
Yeah,
But
nice.
all right. So good guess. This one. So we did rushing yards. Now we'll do most net passing yards in a semifinal. So we have, is it A, Trevor Lawrence versus Ohio State in 2021? Is it B, Joe Burrow, LSU versus Oklahoma 2019 on that legendary run? Or is it C, Jameis Winston against Oregon in 2015?
Okay, this is tough. The biggest thing I know, or I know Burrow went for at least or close to 400 yards, and Trevor's up there, Jameis, but I've got to say Burrow.
And you're correct. So Joe Burrow had 493 yards.
See, I couldn't remember if the 493 was in that game or the championship.
Yeah,
Because like in those two playoff games, he went for like 900 plus and 12 touchdowns.
yeah, insane. That kid was cooking. Like a lot
Oh,
of people say that team, like in all-time discussions, are like, oh, like them, like they'd blow out LSU. LSU, Joe Burrow in the playoffs was the
uh,
nastiest thing. He was just, I like. I'm a USC fan, but
Yeah.
that was one of my favorite teams to watch in recent history. Like
Mm.
just insane talent. But yeah, the number two was Trevor Lawrence, with just 400 yards, so about 93 off from the
Wow.
record.
That's
All right,
crazy. Yeah, that was a crazy run for him. Okay, what do we got next?
all right. So next we have receiving yards. So we have in the semifinals we have Amari Cooper versus Ohio State in 20 oh wait, is this? Yeah. This is the right list. Yeah, okay. Scratch Amari Cooper. I think I pulled that from a championship. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. So we have Darren Carrington versus Florida State. He was an Oregon wide receiver
Yeah.
in 2015.
Wow.
Then we have B, Justin Ross versus Notre Dame. He was the Clemson
Yeah.
wide receiver who I thought was just going to be so good in the NFL, and he's not. Then we have that was 2018, and then we have Jay Jettas versus Oklahoma in 2019.
When your quarterback goes for 493, that's makes it where you want to choose that guy. But man, Carrington, yeah, I mean, I don't have a recollection from that game of what he did, so it's tough for me to say him. And the second one you said, give me the Justin
Just
Ross.
Justin
Justin
Ross,
Ross,
yeah.
yeah. Ah, he had Jamar Chase with him as well, who was also there doing awesome things. So, let's just go Justin Ross.
Justin Ross. You probably should have gone with your gut. It was Jay
Yeah.
Jettas. He had 227 yards receiving and four touchdowns.
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
Carrington had 165
Yeah.
and Justin had 148. But
Well, yeah, I was not even close.
yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. So I realized why Amari Cooper was on my mind is
Uh huh.
because this was another category that we have in most receptions in a semifinals.
Wow.
So we have Amari Cooper versus Ohio State 2015.
Yeah.
B Samuel Curtis, Ohio State versus Clemson in 2016.
Hmm.
And then we have the man that we've been saying recently, Justin Jefferson versus Oklahoma 2019.
Man, yeah. I mean, going for 220 and all that, and those Amari Cooper teams, they ran the ball a lot, so it's tough not knowing if he could have as many receptions. But man, let's just say it's gonna be different because they were popping off for so many yards. Amari Cooper's a possession receiver. He's getting those catches. I'm gonna go with Amari.
So Amari was tied for second with
Ah,
Samuel Curtis
because it's Jefferson again.
because Jefferson had 14 receptions and Curtis and Cooper had tied for 9.
Dude, these aren't even Justin Jefferson.
Just had an
Pretty much.
insane game.
Hey, everyone, this is what you need to hear. If the question includes the 2019 LSU team, choose them, no matter what.
It was really like as I was getting into the weeds, I was like, oh, this is a lot of 2019 just LSU whooping on
It makes sense.
Oklahoma.
It makes sense.
It, yeah, it was insane. Lincoln Riley, man, those Alex Grinch defenses, just insane. Um, but yeah, all right. So we're going to circle back. We're going to circle back to quarterbacks,
Okay.
and we're going to have passing touchdowns.
Yes.
Which, yeah, all right. Let me pull that up real quick. All right. So we have passing touchdowns. Where is that on my list? Okay. So we have Justin Fields versus Clemson. Uh, and B, we have Joe Burrow versus Oklahoma. And then we have C, Mac Jones versus Notre Dame.
Yeah, I just said it. I can't go against it. With 6 touchdowns, I'm gonna go with Joe Burrow.
So Joe Burrow did not have 6 touchdowns because
Oh,
Joe
and that
Burrow
was,
had 7
oh my
touchdowns,
gosh.
and he was the correct answer.
Oh my God.
Yep.
7. Was it total or just passing?
Uh, I think it's passing.
Wow.
That's what it says here. But yeah, no, he that game was absolutely insane. So next we have oh what? Okay, next we have rushing touchdowns.
Okay.
The way they do these, just if you want to look up college football playoff, what you call it,
Yeah.
stats,
History
don't go
stats.
to their website. It is so just incredibly hard
Fair
to
enough.
figure stuff out. So we're gonna go. All right. Yeah. So rushing touchdowns. We have Jalen Hurts rushing touchdowns
Oof.
versus LSU in yeah. Jalen Hurts versus LSU. I was like, that doesn't make sense. That makes total
Yeah.
sense in 2019 because he was the
Mhm.
quarterback, not Kyler
Yeah.
Murray. We have Travis Etienne
Mm.
versus Ohio State, and then we have Sony Michelle against Oklahoma with those 11 rushing attempts.
Which I know he had 3 touchdowns. With that, would anyone honestly have 4? Would Jalen Hurts have had 4? Would 18 have 4 touchdowns? Uh I'm gonna stick with Sony Michelle.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have told you he had 3 rushing touchdowns because it was Sony Michelle. He had 4
Context
total
clues.
touchdowns,
Okay.
which ties for the most touchdowns in a semifinal because he had 1 receiving as well. But so he had 3, Jalen Hurts had 2, and then Travis Etienne also had 1 as well.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and then so for the last one for today, we're just gonna go to receiving touchdowns, which we'll see if you get this one. Um, so we have Devonte Smith versus Notre Dame. We have Cornell Powell versus Ohio State 2021. Uh, and then we have Jay Jettas versus Oklahoma in 2019.
So here's the thing. Devontae Smith, he won the Heisman.
He absolutely did.
He had, I think, 20 touchdowns that year. Cornell Powell, I've never heard of him in my life. So I've got to consider him. But
That's
I'm going to stick with the 4 touchdowns of Justin Jefferson.
He indeed had 4 touchdowns, but Devonte Smith only had 3. So you get that one correct.
Dang, dude, those are some crazy stats. And pretty much that just highlights how crazy that 2019 LSU team was. So, man, that was good. Those are some good trivia questions with the multiple choice, too.
Yeah, and not to knock Cornell Powell, Clemson legend. Against Ohio State that game, he had 8 receptions for 139 yards and 2 touchdowns.
You're telling me right now that Trevor Lawrence threw to a guy named Cornell Powell?
Yeah, that honestly, that I saw this name and I wrote down the list of names on a piece of paper, and I looked at it real quick, and then for a second I'm like, I don't even know what team this guy was on. So I had to like
Dude,
quickly look and make sure it was Clemson.
I can go back to, I can give you Justin Ross and T. Higgins and throw you back to other names, but wow, that is crazy. I'll have to look at a picture and I'll recognize him then. But very good. Hey, great trivia stuff there. Let's quickly review our brackets for the playoff. We'll see how we did and what we're looking at, and then we'll pick our games for tonight and tomorrow. So looking at mine, I went 2-2 in the first round. I had Clemson beating Texas, thinking they could pull off the magic like they did against SMU. Then I had Tennessee beating Ohio State, thinking the strength of the SEC would carry forward and be able to beat the Buckeyes. Both those were incorrect, but I did correctly have Penn State and Notre Dame winning their games as they did pretty easily. So a 2-2 week for me. But with that, I had, uh, thankfully, I had both those teams, Clemson and Tennessee, losing in the next round. So I still have my Final Four intact, but it was a rough go of it there, 2-2. And I know you had Clemson as well. What was your first round like?
Yeah, so my first round, both had Clemson, but swept the rest. I was on the fence for that SMU Penn State game. I don't know why. I love underdog stories, you know.
Yep.
But yeah, so I got the Ohio State game correctly out. That was definitely one of the ones I was a little more nervous on. Yeah, and then Penn State and then Notre Dame. That was also one I was like, maybe, but yeah, glad I ended up going with the favorite in these games, you know?
Yeah, that's a good choice. And now, leading into our picks, you have our pick'ems there up on your computer.
Yes, I do.
Let's grab those and tell us where we're at on the season. Because at this point, we have four quarterfinal games, two semifinals, one championship. We only have seven more games to pick on the season. So we've got to see where we're at overall. So how do we stack up?
So you are not going to believe it, especially where we were a couple weeks ago. So after the regular season was over, you were up 43-28 to 39-32, a nice four team cushion. And the conference championships, I ended up sweeping and you went 2-3. So that got it 45-31, 44-32. And with this slate of games, you going 2-2 and me going 3-1, it is now 47-33 to 47-33.
Wow.
So we have 7 games left
Oh my
and it
goodness.
is tied. So
We are all square
we are
after all
locked.
this. We are totally locked up at 47-33. We've got four games to pick this week. And here's how it works. We set up our bracket, and so we might have gotten some games right or some games wrong coming off of last week. Our picks, our weekly picks, are separate from our bracket. So now, as we're doing our picks, we can go separate from what we originally predicted. This is just what we're thinking right now on these games. So uh, let's go for it. Let's look at our games for this week. We've got, starting with tonight. Remember, this is day of stuff. This is fresh stuff you're getting right now. Penn State, Boise State tonight. This huge game. We have the other three tomorrow. And with it, Nathaniel, who's going first? Because this is huge.
Oh, oh shoot. Okay,
This is
okay.
big.
So I went first last week. So
Okay.
I believe you go
Well,
first this week. Yes.
this Penn State Boise State team a matchup. I don't know how many times I can say it over a year, but I'm always down on Penn State. The thing is, Boise State is so heavily led by Ashton Genty. Maddox Madsen, he's done a good job of keeping things under control, but I don't think he's some dynamic playmaker who can totally run things or change things for Boise State. I've seen Penn State play. They're not at the biggest of stages, so they can't fold yet. But that defense, I just think will keep carrying them forward. So I'm going Penn State, as I did pick previously, to be able to handle Ashton Genty. I don't know that he's going to break the rushing record. I think Penn State might hold him, and I'm going with the Nittany Lions.
Yeah. Good pick. Good pick. For this one, I think in my bracket, I have Boise State going. Moving on from Penn State in the Fiesta Bowl. After having a couple weeks to kind of cook on it, just let it stew in the brain. You know, you're thinking, Penn State, they're just too good. But James Franklin, big games. He can't have another game in Happy Valley. He can't go back to the whiteout and lean back on the laurels and make them scared. I'm going Boise State here. I'm
Oh,
gonna stick to my guns. There may be another place where I don't stick to my guns, but here, I don't know if I want to, but I feel like I have to.
oh
There
man.
has to be an upset somewhere here, so I'm kind of banking it on it being Boise State and the Fiesta Bowl Magic. They are 3-0 in Fiesta Bowls. Obviously, Chris Peterson is not carrying this team right now, but this Boise State team, I feel a little magic in the air, and we'll see if they pull it off tonight.
Yeah, it's a good thought, especially considering we had so many underdogs win in the first round. But we're on to the next game here. Tomorrow, our first game, Texas playing Arizona State. This one I'm really excited about because we've seen the firepower of Arizona State and obviously the strength of Texas. And I'm not totally sure. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, so this one's interesting. I had Arizona State originally beating Clemson in this spot. And I really love Arizona State and what they're doing. I think Sam Levitt, their freshman quarterback, he had some gutsy things to say. Where I think in an interview he said this is going to prove why he's a better quarterback than Quinn Ewers. Um, really, really gutsy, or maybe he just said better quarterback. I think best quarterback on the field, something like that. Um, but I think after watching that Texas Clemson game, where Texas just their defense locked down, their running game looked great. Arizona State sneakily has a very good defense where they're very opportunistic, getting a lot of turnovers, and they limit a lot of the rushing and passing games that they kind of go up against. But I think Texas is going to be too much. I will go back on my bracket and have Arizona State lose in the first round. But I think this is going to be a good game. I
Yeah,
Arizona
I'm hoping
State,
so.
Cam Scadaboo, Stingers up. They're going to make it a game.
Fingers up, baby.
I hate
Yeah,
that I'm going against them.
I definitely hope that it is. And I similarly had Clemson winning and then Arizona State beating Clemson. And, I I see a big difference here in the overall schedule that they face, the SEC versus the Big 12. Texas has gone up against great teams all season long and overall has faced a more difficult schedule than Arizona State. And Texas, when we were talking about them a few weeks ago, heading into the conference championship game against Georgia, I picked them to win, saying they have been dominating on the ground and their running game is going to carry them to a victory. When they played Georgia, they abandoned the running game and they left it on Quinn Ewers' shoulders again, and they lost to Georgia for a second time this year. But also, don't forget, Georgia is the only team that has beat Texas this season. No other teams have. And I think now, especially after how their running game performed in the first round against Clemson, they're going to keep that going. And hopefully, I know Wisner was hurt at some point in that game, and I'm not totally sure about his availability. But Jadon Blue is a great running back as well. I think they're going to control things on the ground, and Texas is going to win this game and move forward. And that brings us to the biggest rematch of the season that we're all looking forward to: Ohio State, Oregon, in a huge game here. Will Howard, I heard he was saying, I can't be worried about the nightmare that was the loss against Oregon and think about that. I've just got to think about going forward. Man, Ohio State is a team that similarly we've talked about is maybe having a letdown in big games. They lost to Michigan there at the end of the year, and my thoughts on them were down as I had Tennessee beating them, but they completely manhandled Tennessee. And now in this rematch against Oregon, can they can they dominate like they did last game. Oregon, I have as in my bracket the national champion. So can I possibly have them beating Ohio State, or can I have them losing to Ohio State in this game? No, no, I'm going with Oregon. I'm still sticking with the Ducks. I I think at some point they're gonna have to just prove themselves. And at this stage, I say Dylan Gabriel is a better quarterback than Will Howard. Nico, who we played last game, was not a better quarterback than Will Howard. So going into this game, I think Oregon's with all their rest that they've had, they're going to be able to come and win and make their way to the semifinal.
Yeah, like you mentioned, rest. I think that's going to be a big thing. That's not something we've seen where people having buys yet in this playoff. So we'll really have to see how does rest affect one team over the other. So yeah, it's interesting. I think here, this is what I predicted, where Ohio State would be matching up against Oregon, and just like you had Oregon going the entire way, as much as it broke my heart. But I feel something cooking. Ohio State looked great. Um, and they had a little revival on the football team, maybe a little Facing the Giants magic. Shout out if you've seen that great movie. I'm not sure a $20 million roster really counts as being the David in a David and Goliath story, but I think Ohio State has definitely been playing with this game in mind, and it was a close game in Autzen. And this is kind of what I was bringing up earlier, them being hot against, blowing out Tennessee. Is that going to serve them well against an Oregon team that hasn't played in how many weeks? I
Mm.
think yes. I think Ohio State wins this game, which would destroy my bracket, but it would make me very happy. So yeah, I'm going Ohio State here.
Yeah, this has got to be a toss up. I mean, it's
Yeah.
two great teams going against each other, and there's a reason it's the one we're all looking forward to. So that'll be great. And that brings us to our last game of the quarterfinals: Notre Dame against Georgia. Georgia obviously missing Carson Beck. Their starting quarterback is out for the rest of the season, already had surgery, declared for the draft. Notre Dame coming off their win against Indiana, taking on the Dogs, who you got here in our last game of the week.
Yeah, I thought before getting into it, I just really thought with the Carson Beck news, it was very funny how many people were saying, "Oh, they were just waiting for them to get into the playoffs before announcing Carson Beck was out and all that stuff," because Florida State got kicked out. They won the SEC championship, so it was an auto bid either way. So
Yeah.
it really didn't matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's big time, especially if Georgia moves on from this game, just having Gunnar Stockton. I will say back in the old days, 2016, 2015, Georgia was trotting out a brand new quarterback, Jake Fromm, I believe is his name, against a Notre Dame team. I think it was 2015, and they ended up winning 20-19 or something crazy like that. Everett Golston was Notre Dame's quarterback, I believe. Future Florida State, or maybe, I don't know. All the
Yeah.
timelines are mixing up,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I don't think that's going to happen here. I picked Notre Dame to win. Like we were saying before, the defense is just nasty. I think even Kirby Smart was mentioning how this is like an SEC team, the way it's constructed, just from the trenches out, focused on the run game. I think this will be a really great matchup. I know Georgia is the favorite by 1 point, but I think Gunnar Stockton not being in this moment before, not really having a start and everything's on his back. We'll see how it goes. I think it'll be close, but I think I'm going to stick with my guns and have Notre Dame winning in this one.
Yeah. Yeah. With that, in my bracket, even with Gunnar Stockton, I had Georgia winning this game, then beating Penn State and heading all the way to the championship, losing to Oregon. And now, at this point, when I'm looking at these teams, as you were just mentioning, Notre Dame has been rolling. through their schedule. Their defense has been shutting teams down and playing fantastic. Their offense, as you said, running the ball, their quarterback play has been great. They've been the all around team that you're hoping for coming into the playoffs. And Georgia, we've seen kind of opposite over time. Their defense is still really solid, but their offense has made mistakes. Their wide receivers are not what they have been. They're missing their starting quarterback now, which is certainly going to be a problem for them. I have Georgia winning this in my bracket, but everything is stacking up for Notre Dame to win this game. So I've got to go with Notre Dame as well. I it just makes too much sense to pick Notre Dame because everything is going in their favor. And even though Georgia has the pedigree, I don't know that they're going to have enough to win this game. So there you have it. We've got our picks for this week. Looking forward to our first game tonight and then 3 more tomorrow. I was telling Nathaniel, I'm traveling back to San Diego, but going back home tomorrow. At least we're flying out at 7:30 p.m. So, hey,
Okay.
I can watch the first game, even some of the second game. We'll be traveling during the third, but man, we'll be watching everything and trying to stay up to date on what's happening. And we'll talk to you guys about what's going on in the playoffs next week as well. So thanks for tuning in. As always, for Nathaniel Gilmore, I'm Andrew Hudson with the Swampy Coliseum Podcast. Follow us on YouTube, Spotify. You can follow us on Instagram. See our posts and our reels there as we'll have things coming up every week. Thanks so much. Talk to you later.
See you.